Just try and picture this. 7, maybe 8 solid hours of air raid sirens. Just constant wailing.
Unrelenting.
Yeah. And thousands of people forced underground, into subway tunnels, into shelters.
Right.
While above them, well, destruction across almost every part of Kyiv. That was July 4th, 2025.
Residents called it, I think the quote was, absolutely horrible and sleepless. One of the worst nights they'd faced.
It's a terrifying image, isn't it? But beyond just the horror, what does this kind of sustained attack, what does it really tell us about maybe Russia's strategy now? Is something shifting?
I think it does signal something. This level of intensity for that long, it feels strategic. It's not just about hitting targets. It's about overwhelming defenses, yes, but also inflicting this deep psychological fear, forcing people into survival mode for hours on end.
That raw impact and the strategy behind it, that's exactly what we want to unpack in this deep dive today.
Right.
Our mission, really, is to pull out the key insights from what's been happening. We need to look at the sheer scale of these recent attacks, the complicated diplomacy happening, the U.S. and Russian leaders talking, and critically, what state Ukraine's air defenses are actually in.
And of course, the impact on the civilians caught in the middle of it all.
Exactly. We're using reports, analyses, everything we can find to help you understand not just the what, but the so what. What does this mean going forward?
And it's interesting, how these latest attacks stack up against, well, the whole war so far. The data really does suggest a step up, an intensification. It feels different.
Okay, let's dig into that intensification then. Start with the scale. That July 4th attack on Kyiv, Ukraine reported, 550 drones and 11 missiles.
Yeah, that was the number Ukraine put out. Other sources had slightly different figures, maybe 537 total aerial weapons. Another said 539 drones, 11 missiles. But the consensus seems to be well over 500 drones and missiles combined.
Just a huge number. And like you said, that volume isn't just random destruction. It's got to be strategic, right? Overwhelm the systems, terrorize the population. It really does feel unprecedented for this conflict.
And the immediate human cost connects right back to that. On July 4th, reports said at least 20, maybe 23 people injured, 14 of them hospitalized just in Kyiv.
Awful.
And personal stories, they really hit home. There was a wedding photographer, her home just destroyed. She said staying there, it would have been suicidal.
Wow.
And another story, a family apparently saved because their dog woke them up, pulled them toward the shelter just before a drone hit. It's more than just numbers, isn't it? It's lives completely disrupted.
Absolutely. And the damage wasn't, surgical. The sources say strikes hit nearly every district in Kyiv. We're talking infrastructure, homes, a 5-story apartment building, other complexes heavily damaged or destroyed.
Right. Even a hospital caught fire from falling debris, and just a regular civilian warehouse got hit.
So when you see that kind of widespread damage hitting homes, hospitals, does that tell you anything about the intended targets versus the actual outcome?
Well, it definitely makes claims of only hitting military targets harder to accept. And what's really concerning is the trend here. These big attacks seem to be happening almost weekly now.
Weekly.
That's what reports suggest. And in June alone, Russia apparently launched a record 5,438 drones at Ukraine, plus over 330 missiles, nearly 80 of those ballistic. It's not just a one-off surge. It feels like a sustained escalating air campaign. Constant pressure.
And Kyiv isn't the only place feeling it, right?
Yeah.
These casualties are happening across the country.
Exactly. There's another massive attack back on May 25th. That one killed at least 12 people, injured dozens more all across Ukraine, including, tragically, 3 children in the Zhytomyr region. Fatalities in Kherson, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, too. It's widespread.
Just horrifying.
Yeah.
And this sustained intensity, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, does it? There's a whole diplomatic layer here.
Right, and that's where it gets really complex. That July 4th attack, for instance, happened very soon after a long phone call between President Trump and President Putin.
Oh, interesting timing.
Very. President Zelensky saw that timing as, how do you put it, a deliberate signal that Moscow has no intention of ending the war in terror.
So high-level talks, but then this huge attack immediately after. What does that signal about the diplomacy?
It suggests a pretty deep disconnect, doesn't it? Like, despite the leaders talking, their fundamental goals are still miles apart, a real impasse.
And maybe surprisingly, Trump himself sounded quite frustrated after the call. He said he was very disappointed with Putin, said he didn't think Putin was looking to stop the fighting, and that he'd made no progress on any kind of deal.
Yeah, that was his take. But then you look at the Russian side. Putin's foreign affairs advisor, Ushakov, was very clear. He said Russia will achieve its goals, basically, eliminating what they see as the root causes of the conflict, and that Russia will not back down.
That sounds pretty unyielding, no compromise there.
Not much room for it, no. And that clashes directly with what Zelensky wants. He's pushing the U.S. hard for appropriate sanctions, saying it depends mainly on the U.S., and he wants to talk to Trump, obviously, with getting that halted military aid flowing again right at the top of his list.
So where does this leave actual peace efforts? Are there any?
Well, the sources we looked at say the U.S.-led international efforts have been pretty much fruitless. All they've managed are some prisoner exchanges. There was a big one, the largest in years, apparently, but no actual date set for more negotiations.
And the Kremlin saying they see no immediate diplomatic way out.
Right. It's not looking good for a quick resolution, or really any resolution soon.
Okay, so a diplomatic stalemate. And this leads us straight into a huge challenge for Ukraine, doesn't it? Their ability to defend themselves.
Exactly, because the U.S. has paused some key military aid shipments, specifically those crucial Patriot air defense missiles.
Why the pause?
The reporting suggests it's about U.S. interests' first concerns that American military stockpiles were getting too low.
And that pause is already having an effect on the battlefield, it seems.
It looks like it. Sources pointed out something new and worrying for Kyiv during that big July 4th attack. For the first time, apparently not a single ballistic missile was shot down.
But Patriots usually handle those, right?
Typically, yes. So this strongly suggests Ukraine either didn't have the interceptors available, or maybe they were forced to conserve the few they have left.
A tough choice.
A very tough choice. Plus, there's the added complication that newer Russian Shahed drones, the ones they now make themselves as Geron 2, they're apparently faster, fly higher, harder to intercept even if you have the missiles. So it's a double whammy for air defense.
Wow. So what are they doing? They must be looking for other options.
They are. European allies are trying to figure out how to, pick up the slack. Germany's offered to fund some new Patriot systems, and Ukraine has long-term plans to build up its own arms industry,
But that takes time.
a lot of time. And meanwhile, on the ground, Russian forces are making slow advances along that huge 1,000-kilometer front line. Ukraine seems to be giving ground pretty much all along the front, and they're under severe pressure.
So Russia has the initiative. They're dictating the fight.
It seems that way. They hold the operational initiative, which forces Ukrainian commanders into difficult decisions about where to commit their limited reserves.
That's a bleak picture on the ground. And as if all that wasn't enough, the sources mentioned something else. A really disturbing development in Russian tactics.
Yeah, this is grim. Intelligence from Germany and the Netherlands has apparently confirmed the widespread and systemic use of banned chemical weapons.
Chemical weapons, what kind?
Things like chloropacrin and tear gas. Chloropacrin specifically is a choking agent used back in World War I.
My God, how are they using it?
Reports say it's for trench clearances. They call it a mask breaker. It apparently sinks into dugouts, irritates the skin, makes it hard to breathe even with a mask, forcing soldiers out into the open.
Or they can be targeted by regular weapons.
Exactly. It's a clear violation of the Chemical Weapons Convention, illegal chemical warfare.
That's just horrific, adding another layer of brutality. And beyond that specific tactic, what about the overall air war strategy? Is it just about the battlefield or something else?
There seems to be a strategic element aimed at the civilian population, too, trying to damage the civilian will to fight, break morale, that old idea.
Does that usually work, though, historically?
Often, no. History suggests it can actually backfire, make people more determined. The sources acknowledge that. You also have the Russian Defense Ministry claiming they only hit factories making drones and military gear in Kyiv.
But Ukrainian officials say otherwise.
Right. They call it deliberate act of terror against civilian areas. So you have this contrast in narratives playing out, too. Information warfare alongside the physical war, each side framing it for their audience.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Pull the threads together. We see these unprecedented, escalating Russian air attacks. Record numbers of drones, missiles, widespread destruction, terrible civilian cost.
All happening while diplomacy seems completely stuck, despite leaders talking.
And that pause in U.S. military aid is having a real critical impact on Ukraine's defenses, leaving them vulnerable, scrambling for alternatives, and actually losing ground.
And through it all, Ukrainian civilians are bearing this immense burden, those horrifying nights, homes destroyed, lives shattered.
So thinking about everything we've discussed, the sheer intensity, the chemical weapons used, the shifting international support, what does this deep dive really suggest? It raises some big questions, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you wonder about traditional defense strategies. How viable are they against this kind of evolving, brutal warfare? And maybe more importantly, how does the world adapt? How do you deter this kind of aggression? Or
Yeah.
what happens when conventional defenses just get stretched too thin? What comes next? It's something we all need to think about, honestly.